But when David Seymour is seemingly the correct person in the room talking about issues of race or Māori issues, it means someone strayed pretty far. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mātua Winston Peters. Green MP Ricardo Menéndez March says Prime Minister Christopher Luxon needs to step in after NZ First Leader Winston Peters made an allegedly xenophobic comment about him. ACT Leader David Seymour has come to the Green MP's defence, saying, "We've got to stop obsessing over when people arrive in New Zealand." But Luxon has this afternoon refused to comment, ignoring questions on the matter from the Herald. Now, this ties directly to that conversation we had with Simon, because this is the example of a leader. And when we read Simon's article, we were like, John Key didn't have these problems with these other minor parties. Jacinda Ardern didn't have these problems with these minor parties, but this guy Luxon is, and his credibility is being shot by the actions of others who aren't in national but are in government. And this is another example. What? Refused to comment. Refused to comment? Like the comment is, oh, I don't agree. It's stupid. People can call it Aotearoa. You know, we have a rule in the house that you can speak English, you can speak Māori, you can speak New Zealand Sign Language. There are 3 languages. So therefore Aotearoa is New Zealand. That's it. Conversation's over. But refuse to comment actually makes it bigger, and once again just speaks to everything we talked about with Simon Wilson and his pathetic leadership credentials. Do you want to offer anything before we actually play the story, Chewie?
No, roll on.
The Green Party is again calling on the Prime Minister to rein in his deputy after Winston Peters referred to the nationality of Ricardo Menéndez March in Parliament. He argued that Menendez March should not be allowed to refer to New Zealand as Aotearoa. And while Christopher Luxon wasn't...
Why? What? But just why? Yeah, why?
Interested in pulling him into line, another coalition partner was. Here's senior political correspondent Jenna Lynch.
New Zealand First singing it loudly and proudly. But uttering it in the House.
Does she think it's fair to deport people who have been born in Aotearoa?
Apparently a different story.
Point of order, the Ronald Winston Peters.
By the way, I think he was talking to Erica Stanford. So he was talking to Erica Stanford about that case of the young guy who's going to be deported to India because he was born after a certain date. So he's talking to Erica Stanford, right? So this is actually nothing to do with Mātua Peters at all. But he had to stick his oar in.
Here we go again.
My question is a serious one. Why is someone who applied to...
Sorry, Winston, it's not. I mean, so it's not a serious one. I just want to make that clear.
The Ronald Winston Peters.
Here we go again.
My question is a serious one. Why is someone who applied to come to a country called New Zealand as an immigrant in 2006 allowed in this House to change the country's name without the mandate, the approval or referendum of the New Zealand people?
Winston Peters...
I mean, the mandate, the approval, a referendum of New Zealand people. It's the name of the country. You're allowed to use Māori in the House.
He should have been thrown out of the House for being just... I assume he just woke up at the wrong time and just, oh, shit, got to do something. But yeah, it's stupid. He hasn't changed the name of the country.
No.
Like, he hasn't banned people calling this place New Zealand.
No.
The relevance of him arriving in 2006 is irrelevant because he got voted in to represent his constituents. Like, so the question of when he arrived is, again, irrelevant.
Although,
like, all of this is a joke.
It does feed into maybe some of Winston's base about these bloody migrants. Look at this guy, bloody came in here and now he's sucking off the teat of the bloody MP and he won't even call it bloody New Zealand.
It is a little bit harder because he's not a woman. Usually that's the gimme, and they got rid of Golriz.
The trifecta,
who was also foreign and a refugee and a woman and a green. So get her. So now it's
lining up for another.
Clear that this crowd have moved on to the next target.
But it's not even moved on. This is, remember Shane Jones? Go back to Mexico. This is the same crew.
The round
Go
with
back
Ricardo
to
Menendez March,
1950.
who was born in Mexico.
The person asking the question is an elected member of this House. If he is using a name that's not
Yes. Get him,
acceptable
Jerry.
to others listening, then I can't do much about that.
Speaker Jerry Brownlee initially brushing it off before making a different ruling.
It's probably not an unreasonable thing to perhaps use, if you want to, the two names Aotearoa New Zealand, but not just...
Oh, fuck off, Jerry. He's basically saying if you're going to use Aotearoa, you should use New Zealand as well. No. So therefore, if you say kia ora, you have to say and hello, right? No, and thank you. No, of course you don't. Don't talk such horse shit.
One. Quite clearly, the minister is sworn as a minister of a government in New Zealand.
Ministers can take the oath in either English or Te Reo Māori, like Shane Jones did, for instance. The coalition...
Oh, he just said Aotearoa and didn't say New Zealand. There wasn't a mandate for you to say that, I don't think. What did Winston say about that?
Not united in this particular culture war.
The Maori word Aotearoa is on our money and it's on our passport. So I would just make the argument that while I prefer to use New Zealand, I'm not here to stop other people saying Aotearoa.
Mass majority of New Zealand.
I hate agreeing with Seymour.
When he's the
100%
reasonable one, that just elevates how far away old man Peters is from reasonable.
I would just make the argument that while I prefer to use New Zealand, I'm not here to stop other people saying Aotearoa.
Mass majority of New Zealanders believe this country's name is New Zealand, and if the name's going to change, we're going to ask New Zealand people first, not have a few little radicals decide they're going to change it.
There was no issue raised when Cabinet Minister Tama Potaka referred to Aotearoa in the House yesterday.
I look forward to engaging with nearly 30% of the entire whenua of Aotearoa to generate more revenue.
Tama Potaka is a Māori, not a recent immigrant.
The third leg of the coalition labelled...
Oh, fuck off.
But remember, these are also these guys. These are also these guys. So he's saying, right, you know what he's saying there? He's saying native born, people who've been here for a long time, they have different privileges. This is coming from the same side of politics that are trying to make sure no one, no matter when you arrive, has special privileges. So they're trying to have it both ways there. He's actually saying the native people, indigenous people can say it. No one else has got the same rights there. That's what he's saying. Whilst out the other side of the mouth for that side of politics, they're saying no one should have different rights based on their ethnicity. So which is it? Which is it, Mr. Jones? You know,
it's right up to the line of like, no, he hasn't earned a reo. He's been here long enough. Wow.
Generate more revenue.
Tama Potaka is a Māori, not a recent immigrant.
The third leg of the coalition labelled Peter's argument about Menendez March's arrival in New Zealand ridiculous.
But it's not a comment I would make. I believe in the principle that no matter whether you came here on a waka, a sailing ship or a 747, if you're here legally, you're a Kiwi and you should be treated equally.
It was utterly appropriate. He applied to a country in 2006 called New Zealand. And in this parliament has just changed the country's name without the mandate, the authority, or referendum of the New Zealand people. It's totally appropriate.
It's just explicitly xenophobic. And again, what we have is language and behaviour that can translate to harm outside of these four walls. And the most disappointing thing about this all is that the Prime Minister is literally too scared to hold Winston Peters to account.
The Greens wrote to the Prime Minister not even a month ago when Winston Peters last brought up the national origins of their MPs and Shane Jones yelled, "Send the Mexicans home." They never heard back.
I mean, we can keep writing these letters, but what you're saying is the Prime Minister is completely missing in action.
The PM wouldn't stop for questions on it today.
Are you going to pull Winston Peters into line?
Choosing silence over a war with Winston.
There you go. That'll do for that story, Chewie. It's just, I mean, just flip it. If it was the other way round, just flip it. It would just be seen as just straight out racism. You know, they would be losing their little minds if it was the other way around and it was the woke lefties saying something similar to them. They would be losing their minds with their little culture war. And Luxon, you are weak. You are going to be rolled. If you want that knighthood, it might actually be time to learn how to get a bit of a spine on some of these things, Mr. Luxon.
There's a couple of crimes here, which is the outright racism and xenophobia. Literally weeks after they did the same thing and got criticised. They don't give a fuck about it. Winston is just in full drunk uncle mode. Granddad's into the fucking port again and is ranting about foreigners. The other crime, and I think that the more serious crime here is having me on this show agreeing with David fucking Seymour.
Yeah, but the problem is
caused me psychic damage.
Yeah, but dude, the problem is it's like, you know, when you hear comedians and they say they tell an overtly ugly joke, that they're telling it for people to be uncomfortable, and one person laughs a little bit too loud, and you're realizing they're kind of agreeing with the joke from up the front of stage, whereas everyone else is awkwardly uncomfortable. It feels a bit like that with Seymour, because whilst we agree with the principle of what he's saying in this, he's using it to actually further his own narrative around the Treaty Principles Bill that we're all the same. So it's like he may agree, but it's a bit like what Simon Wilson was saying earlier about people on the far right agreeing with him about Luxon. They might be agreeing, but it's actually for a very different reason, and we can be separated from that, I think.
Yeah, it's such a diversion. It's like, I don't know. Again, the coalition is not pulling in the same direction. They never have. We now have the two deputy leaders sniping at each other and scoring points off each other over something that, just as pointed out in that story, has been a non-issue in the House, has never been an issue up until now. Depending on who's doing it, it'll never be an issue again, but somehow it's an issue when this particular MP uses the words that others can use. It's so unhinged. There is no like consistency or anything like that. And that's the story, is that Winston couldn't walk a straight line if he tried, both in his positions and, I guess, depending on the time of day, in real life.
I want to share something with you now that I saw across my TikTok feed today. I'm a little bit reticent to share this because, you know, that TikTok I shared last night, that got us blocked from the entire world for breaching copyright.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yep.
I got messages of that going, oh, the video's gone.
I had to trim it out, and then they accepted it. But it was we've been blocked before from like Russia or this, and it was from the entire world for doing that.
Not our Russian audience. It's the only way that they find out that not all of Russia is inside Russia anymore.
If anyone knows KDP_NZ on Twitter, let them know that we're using their stuff, and please don't get us blocked for the whole world. Because this feels like this one here. This is a mimic of Seinfeld, but it's based in Invercargill, and you have to listen to the language. And one of the most important things, Chewie, is to see who's in the credits at the very end. Now, trigger warning, this is pretty horrifically racist, just so you know. If you don't want to hear it, then block your ears. But what we're doing is showing you that these are the people that Winston is speaking to. Like, this is in all seriousness, these are the people that Winston Peters is speaking to.
I've had a guts full of Maori language being shoved down our throats. I was in an elevator in a government building the other day, and it had something like whaka waka 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 whaka, big print, small print, lift. And that's the last straw for me. I've had a guts full of it.
Now, even that little music from Seinfeld might get us kicked off. But did you like the bit at the end? Executive producer Nobby Clark, also Julian Batchelor. That was the credits for that episode of Invercargill, as it was said. So hopefully that won't get us booted.
Look,
but
as someone in the south of the south, like, you come across these attitudes from the older crowd, and it's embarrassing. Like the statements from Nobby Clark. Embarrassing. It is cringeworthy. It is like, does that really bother you that you saw a sign in a lift?
That
really?
said this,
Was that
apparently it said that. Apparently,
yeah, I'm sure. Sure that was that man's last straw. I think the last straw should have been the amount of knitwear that he was wearing. It was very strange for an inside event. Yeah, just like, this is the last frantic flailing of a certain segment of a certain demographic who somehow feel threatened by this sort of stuff.
Yeah,
and it
gone
should
by
be
attrition.
Yes, it's offensive. Yes, it's boring. Yes, it's all of those things. But it is the tail end of it. Like, the kids going through school now do not have a problem with this.
Yeah.
They're integrated into the culture. They're proud of the culture because it has come forward over the space of decades. That man has seen it coming forward, and he feels like it's threatened because he can go on talkback radio and say, you can't even call it a fucking hospital anymore, and the cost of space is too high. It's just the ramblings of an irrelevant person who feels irrelevant, who feels like he's being threatened by something that has nothing to do with him and realistically doesn't change his day to day. But he wants to be that person that's standing up for something. You're standing up for the past, and you're standing up for ignorance and racism. Don't be proud of that. Sit down. Take the mic away.